Thanks. Okay, hello everyone. I'm Tyler Gomes. I'm the Chief Administrator for Kilohana, a division of the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement. Thank you for being here in person today. Just so you know, we are also recording, so this will be going onto both the Hawaii Tourism Authority website as well as our regenerative tourism website. So documenting this in perpetuity is actually one of our main goals today. And then also we've got an audience of maybe 35, 40 online joining us as well. And so thank you to everyone who's called in to participate. So at Kilohana, our primary responsibility is aiding the Hawaii Tourism Authority in their destination stewardship work. We've got a number of programs we're working with them on, but the one that we're all here for today is our regenerative tourism, technical assistance, and capacity building programs. The first of which is the foundational technical assistance program, which is what you're all here for. I want to thank the Hawaii Convention Center and Hawaii Tourism Authority for hosting us this morning. Okay, so to kick it off, I'm going to introduce the Chief Stewardship Officer for the Hawaii Tourism Authority, Mr. Kalani Ka'ana'ana, who's going to share the context for why we're here and introduce this program.
You know, at the Hawaii Tourism Authority, we've been having conversations around sustainable tourism, responsible tourism, regenerative tourism, whichever term you might sort of be most familiar with. But at the end of the day, at 2019, we knew that there was a lot of pressure in our communities about what was happening with tourism. And so we really went out to community and listened. And we were actually in the tail end of our strategic planning process. We had spent a year going out into communities, understanding what their concerns were and what our weaknesses were, our opportunities were, the whole SWOT analysis, all the things. And in January of 2020, we published the 2020-2025 HTA Strat Plan, which really, I think, was heralding a new direction for tourism for us. It prioritized natural resources as the first pillar, Hawaiian culture as the second, community as the third, and brand marketing as the fourth pillar. And really understanding that those four interacting pillars were going to be the thing that decided or guided what we were going to do in the 5 years ahead. I think we all know it happened a few months later, and it completely interrupted everything that we were thinking we were going to do or not going to do. And I think, like many of us, we had that pandemic pause that many people had, and we did the same thing again. We went right back out to community through Zoom and did listening sessions across every community. And what came out of that were the Destination Management Action Plans, and so you might hear them referred to as DMAPs. The DMAPs are composed of actions and sub-actions prioritized by a diverse stakeholder group for each island. And there's a plan for Molokai, there's a plan for Lanai, there's a plan for Maui. They're not just all kind of lumped into one, recognizing that different islands and different communities have different needs and different solutions. And so out of that was really born these ideas about what we could work on over the last 3 years. One of which was this foundational technical assistance program. And so we recognize that there were folks like you who are interested in this industry, want to get engaged in this industry, want to deepen your understanding in it, maybe figure out what's the latest in it, trend-wise, different topics. And so we really wanted to provide these workshops as that opportunity for the Tourism Authority to bring in subject matter experts like we have here on the panel today to share their best wisdom with you all. And really with the end goal of advancing and lifting the quality of the experience for our guests, improving the quality of life for our residents, and so that we can bring some sustainability, and I mean that in the context of longevity, to this industry and what we do. Because I think at the end of the day, we believe that hospitality is a really important part of our lives. Tourism and travel has always been a part of us as humans. I think about our own ancestors who traveled for different reasons, but what we enjoy doing today. And so I think these foundational technical assistance programs really are an attempt to deepen our engagement with community, our engagement with industry stakeholders, and then obviously highlighting those in our community and in our industry who are the experts and really giving them a platform to share their knowledge and experience. So super grateful to you all for making it this morning. This is the very first one. We promise they won't all have strobe lights in the future. And we obviously endeavor to build attendance at them in the long run, but you can certainly pat yourself on the back and say that you were here for the very first one, because this is something we're committed to doing for the next few years. So thanks.
Kalani, just as a question, how much economic activity does tourism in general generate for the state?
Say that one more time.
Economic.
Yeah. So if you look at a high-level economic impact number, visitors spend about $20 billion in Hawaii in a given year. They generate $2.4 billion in tax revenue, so that's money going directly back into state and county coffers. Excuse me, actually, that 2.4 number is only state taxes. And if you think about that from in the context of the state budget, the DOE's entire budget for the year is about $2 billion. And so with that extra $0.4 billion, it pays for the HTA like 4 times over and some extra change. And so really tourism's contributions to our economy really mean that our kids get to go to school. It's just a really easy comparison, 2 billion in, 2 billion out. It also supports over 212,000 jobs in the state of Hawaii. And so it's probably about a quarter of the state's total workforce works in a visitor industry related business. So yeah, that's high level.
No, that's a really helpful segue to explain why we're doing the Foundational Technical Assistance Program. That's launching this week, and what we're focusing on is supporting small businesses of any size with the goal of building a more circular economy. So I think we're trying to help everyone figure out how to tap into the $20 billion that's being spent. A lot of that gets shipped overseas, whether it's people eating out at the Cheesecake Factory, the most populated cheesecake factory in the country, or any one of the luxury non-locally owned shops that are all situated very prominently on Kaua. I think the purpose of the Foundational Technical Assistance Program, also at a really simple level, is how do we get people who are interested in taking their business to that level, the visibility that is extended to larger corporate-owned entities, whether they're local or offshore.
Can I add a stat to that?
Yeah.
Because everybody likes to use that anecdote, right? That all this money comes to Hawaii and then it leaves. And it's true, some of it does leave, but I think it's important that we sort of base that in fact. 81 cents of every dollar that's spent by a visitor stays in Hawaii. Obviously, I think we can do more and we can do better at that. I think it's the mix of where that money is being spent is what we're trying to change, right? I'd rather have them go to Akamai Coffee on Maui instead of Starbucks. It's a mix of those things. I won't apologize for a visitor who buys a $200,000 couch from Hermes and has it shipped home but paid 4% GET on that couch, but then walked across the street and bought shave ice or went to the KCC farmer's market and picked up a bottle of jam. So it's the ecosystem and the mix, and then trying to up that number from 81 cents as much as we can.
Perfect. Okay, so that leads us on to our first speaker for the panel this morning. I'm excited to introduce Mr. Ha'aheo Zablan, who is the general manager of the Kaimana Beach Hotel, which, as one of Hawaii's few locally owned hotels, has really been a leader in embedding their properties with community fabric, but not just that, cultural knowledge, aesthetic, just vibrance. And in doing so, Ha'aheo has really transformed Kaimana Beach in its reopening to be a leader of hotels in Waikiki. Ha'aheo is also one of the few Native Hawaiian general managers for hotels in the state of Hawaii and was last year recognized with the PBN Pineapple Award for Leadership. We're still working on the name for the award. Pineapples, he also wears several hats. He's the chairperson of the Legacy Foundation that hosts Honolulu Pride, which is a massive contributor to our economy in the third week of October every year. I got you. And he's also a board member of the Hawaii Lodging and Tourism Association and a number of community boards and organizations. Hi, Hale. Take it away.
I think you summed it up. But mahalo. I'm from Papakolea. It's for those of you who are not familiar, it's the original Hawaiian homestead here on Oahu. And, when I approach different aspects about the visitor industry, I always think back on, whether it be the Puamelia, which is the official or unofficial flower of Papakolea, which is thank you, mahalo for this, and not the other one. And, my tutu, who was a laymaker and was one of the original sellers on Kalakaua. My dad is very proud of being her opihi and has this picture of her next to her lay truck, actually. And it's situated on Kalakaua across from like the Waikiki, where the Waikiki 3 Theater used to be, for those of you who've been around long enough. And, that picture has always been in my Ohana's Hale in Papakolea, and I have introduced it into to Kaimana. So some of the guest rooms will also have that too. But that's my base, right? That's where the decisions that I make or I suggest for our organization comes from someone that is kama'aina, right, and someone that can trace their mo'oku'auhau, back beyond Papakolea. And so, when we talk about how we move forward in this industry, right, basing our decisions on those that live here in the community that we live within is really important. Like Tyler mentioned, I have the honor to steward Kaimana Beach Hotel. I've had bestowed this kuleana 4 years ago. And when we first started, we wanted to ensure that, well, when you open a hotel in the middle of the pandemic with 11% occupancy, right, there's no rules, right? So you just try everything. And we did, right? We partnered with local purveyors. We partnered with the creative community. We've partnered with different creators that were operational during that time to kind of create either our guest platforms or our F&B offerings, and it stuck because it made sense for us to support the adjacent businesses, in that support the industry. And I think we talked about it a little earlier as well too, right? There is, it's important to look beyond the hotel, right, or the Roberts Hawaii, or those things that are. I talked about local purveyors, and we think about, right, do we want to order frozen cheese, right, from the continent, or is there a local creamery either on Oahu or one of the neighbor islands that we could partner with, right? And so those are the little things that were top of mind for us as we started to build our menus and started to build our guest offerings, and by doing that, we established partnerships with these different organizations that then would, say, you love this cheese, we've got, my neighbor does, poha jam, right? Or, there's just a lot of things that kind of evolve from that when, again, you take yourself back, you are in the community that you work in, the revenue that's generated goes back into the community that you live in, and it just kind of evolves that way.
Your career has been in hotels. I mean, you started in hotels and have worked at a number of properties. And Kaimana in particular is lucky to have you because you have this, you take the initiative to go out and seek partners like this. For people who are looking to bring their products into hotels or their services into hotels, let's say a haʻio doesn't exist at a property, how should they be seeking out these partnerships? How should they approach a hotel to say, hey, I've got a really cool service, a really cool activity, or a really cool jam? How do they approach and, snag a deal?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is, if you go into a hotel and they're offering toast with your breakfast, right, and it's Smuckers or whatever it is, right, and you have poha jam and where part of your product assortment includes poha jam, I wouldn't be afraid to find the food and beverage director or find the restaurant manager, give them a line sheet, tell them about your product, give them samples, right? And let them know, I dined in your restaurant today, and if it was good, it was good. Give them feedback if it wasn't. But, I noticed that you use, grape jelly from Smuckers, and, wouldn't it be great for you to highlight, a local product?
You've also had a number of people just in your lobby or in that dining room that's right off of the bar, whether it be an open market or just presenting their products. Not every hotel does that, and not every hotel makes it easy because there's insurance requirements. Can you give any advice for businesses who, want to be in somebody's lobby showing off their jewelry or their new book or what have you? How do you navigate that world of what it takes to be a vendor in a hotel lobby? I'm talking about insurance in particular because that's been a barrier to a number of businesses that we spoke to.
I mean, that specific piece, does become a barrier. But I mean, if you look at, accelerator programs like Mana Up or Found Her, which is a part of Purple Mai'a, right? You know, they find ways to hui together and, you know, have more of a powerful group that can go in and create a guest experience, right? You know, and we've done pop-ups before. We've done different activations that brought in different organizations, right? But we were looking at it as, okay, we're a community hub, we're a hotel, we're going to have people here, whether they're staying in our guest rooms or in our restaurant or dining in our restaurant. But you know, what does an activation look like that we can, you know, get that traffic into that, you know, private dining room or the lobby or any of those types of things? And so you know, it all just goes back to creating that experience for guests, right? Whatever you're doing, right? Whether it be apparel or food or any of those types of things. So I think approaching it that way is important, and that's why we've worked with, you know, Found Her specifically recently, because I think they're on like their 9th cohort, but you know, they have, you know, a large group that can actually stand up a pop-up or something like that, and you know, make it a guest experience, you know, as well as benefiting, you know, the local groups.
Kalani?
I just want to add, because I'm sorry, I'm going to apologize in advance. You'll find me doing this throughout today. I think it's important to sort of address some of the narratives you might be all hearing or might have yourselves. Tourism is the single largest private economic driver of GDP for the state of Hawaii. I think everybody pretty much knows that. Sometimes it's number one, sometimes it's number two. But the other thing that I think we hear often about is we have this over-reliance on tourism. We need to diversify our economy, right? And that's certainly true. But if I'm being completely honest, we've been talking about that for 60 years. And I hear it from people and my mentors who are older than me who have been trying to address that very topic for decades. What I think is powerful about tourism for me is that tourism is catalytic. Tourism being done the right way, in a way that's respectful and responsible to our communities, our environment, etc., can be a really good catalyst for what we want to see. And so that example of jam might seem like a small thing, but I call it the little big things. Because if we do enough of that, we make sure that that farmer can continue to farm, to make food for us if the ships ever stop coming. We support an entire another industry that is related to tourism, right? So I don't necessarily think that tourism has sucked all the oxygen out of the room and has starved out other industries, but instead tourism can be a catalyst for those other things when we start to make these really conscious choices about buying local, supporting local, changing our logistics supply chains, and how some of that happens. And so I think we're going to hear a little bit of that from both sides in terms of like scale and what that means. But I think at the end of the day, I want to just draw the connection that those little decisions have a big impact for us being able to realize the goals that our residents have set for us.
Yeah, you know, we'll be talking to Justin a little bit later about marketing and sales, but I think this goes towards value proposition, right? This goes towards identifying what your product or service can offer that's different from what's currently offered, and I think that's what we're getting to on this little big thing, right? Is diversification of economic activity in the state of Hawaii doesn't mean we have to abandon tourism as a sector, and in fact, you know, coming back to Haeo's comment about, you know, lei, just as a random fact, 90% of lei are currently imported into the state of Hawaii, which means lei farmers have all struggled. Many have gone out of business. The lei industry is actually very close to a dangerous tipping point. And so when you make conscientious decisions as a business, you're supporting multiple sectors. And then when you, as the service provider, the product supplier, you are also complementing other sectors.
Tyler, if I may just on that note, right? So a lei puamelia is going to be more expensive per piece than purple dendrobium from somewhere else.
Thailand.
Right? Thailand. However, right, if you're just looking at that one piece, and this is probably going out to those that are within the industry and not necessarily the provider, but you know, if we look at just this lei and we compare it to what we can get at a cheaper price, then I think we're not looking at the, you know, we're not looking at the bigger picture, right? We, you know, going back to the poha jam, right? Auntie is able to get her poha jam into, a large restaurant in Waikiki, and she's able to meet the demand and, run a business, perhaps she can scale up, and, now she has Lilikoi butter or something else, right? But, yeah, it all connects, and I think it's important for us to take a broader look at that per property.
So speaking of broader looks at multiple properties, the hotels don't exist in silos. They communicate very closely. And so we're next going to introduce Allison Tomisato Alves, who works with she's the director of marketing at Marriott International. She manages 5 different properties: Sheraton Waikiki, the Royal Hawaiian, Moana Surfrider, Sheraton Princess Kaiulani, and Sheraton Maui Resort and Spa. She was recognized by Hawaii Business Magazine as one of 20 for the next 20. That's really why we picked her. She's just too talented. And I think what Allison really brings to this is you've been quoted as talking about setting the stage for the world that your daughter will live in, and that's why you find working in this industry in particular so transformative, because the ways in which it impacts the landscape of who we are and where we live. So, I think you can talk a little bit about partnerships across properties, but also your experience directly at Marriott. So without further ado, Allison.
Aloha, everyone. I am extraordinarily grateful for the chance to spend this morning with you. I was born and raised here on Oahu, but actually went to Boston to do my undergraduate work. And about 10 years ago, I decided I wanted to move home and start a family with my husband, which is kind of why I came back home. So we live in Aiea, same place where I was raised, raising my daughter, who is now 5. And this industry is one that not only I work in, but my husband is the executive sous chef of Waikiki Beach Marriott. My mom and my auntie worked at the Royal Hawaiian and the Sheraton Princess Kaiulani. And so I'm not unique in having many members of my family and many of the generations that preceded me working in hotels and in tourism. And I think that's just a reality, right, of being born and raised in Hawaii. Someone that you know, whether your neighbor or your relative, has been a part of this industry. And so one thing that I kind of wanted to share with you was when you have 4 hotels, especially hotels that are so different, it offers the opportunity to look at partnerships with local businesses. And I thought I would walk you through 3 that I'm particularly are near and dear to my heart. So the first that I share with you is one that we just are in market with right now. Sheraton Princess Kaiulani has had a lot of different news articles about it, but most recently we renovated the Ainahau Tower, which is 664 rooms. It's the tall tower on the Ewa side of the property. And we worked with a local designer, the Vanguard Theory, on that work. And as part of what the Vanguard Theory does, they actually make sure that they are leveraging local creatives. And so she pulled in Jen Ellenberg, who's a local photographer, to do the artwork in room, and she pulled in Noho Home to do some of the soft goods, like the pillows. And we, as storytellers on the marketing side, reframed the Sheraton Princess Kaiulani renovation story as a story of having 3 incredible female creatives lead that interior design, especially for Sheraton Princess Kaiulani, which is so tied to Kaiulani and has such a feminine brand as it is. This was a space that we knew that we could really leverage. And so every hotel renovates, right? You hear about it all the time. There's rooms being renovated across Hawaii. What makes our renovation special? It's our partners. So what we did was we took the facts and figures of the renovation, number of rooms, et cetera, and really talked about those 3 creatives. On the slide that you see is a copy of the press release that we dropped on the wire, meaning that it was distributed nationally. And then, of course, because of our business mix, we also distributed it in Japan. That not only talked about the renovation, but also a little bit about the creators. We then went to their different homes and businesses to interview them, because in marketing, quite a bit of the storytelling now exists in video. So with NoHo Home, we went out to Waipio Gentry. We filmed Jaylene in her element, walked through the creative process. She shared a little bit about what it's like to grow up in Hawaii and how that influenced the designs that she created for some of the elements that you see in the Princess Ka'iolani guest rooms today. And then we're also showing you some of the different types of marketing that we do that focus more on her story and how she interacts with the hotel versus just a picture of the hotel room, right? That's still there, it's still a beautiful room, but it's really her story that brings Ka'iolani's story to life, that brings the story of the hotel today to life, and offers visibility in places that a independent business might not normally get. So the middle piece that you're seeing here is actually an e-blast with Travel Weekly, my partner here on the left. Justin, what's your current distribution for the e-blasts that we run?
Roughly around 70,000.
Correct. And he'll share a little bit about his audience when we get to him. On the right-hand side, you're seeing some of the content that we produced for LinkedIn, as well as the content on our hotel website, which receives tens of thousands of visitors a month. And so the real takeaway from this particular partnership is it was one that was introduced via another female small business owner here in Hawaii. We knew of NoHo Home, right? We had heard about it and the like, but it was really facilitated by the Vanguard theory. And we were able to really dig into what that story was, primarily because we knew that there was an affinity with the hotel already. And so when you combine the brand alignment with the talent of the small business owner, and then have that structure where we were already going to partner with her on the interior design in some way, shape, or form, you can see kind of how that all comes to life and offers NoHo Home and Jen Ellenberg and the Vanguard theory more visibility in different types of communication channels than you might otherwise not necessarily have access to. The second example that I wanted to kind of share with everyone is a local artist named Nick Kuchar, who is based, as you know, on the Windward side, really prolific for his artwork and then some of the merchandise that he designs that take part of his artwork. One of the things that we try to do at all 4 of our hotels is, where possible, highlight local artists. And so in our renovations, in even the marketing that we do, you'll see us really make sure that we engage with the right artists and are finding the right artist for each of our hotel brands. Now, Nick actually worked on the logo design for Splash Bar, which is our restaurant at one of our hotels, several years ago. And when we were trying to think about what's the cool factor, how do we get people to really take a piece of Hawaii home with us or with them, we looked at our key cards, right? Every single hotel guest gets a key card. If you think about it, at a hotel like Sheraton Princess Ka'iolani, we have 1,100 key cards, over 1,100 key cards going out a day. And so how do we make it so that they have a piece of Hawaii that they keep in their pocket and then hopefully take home as a keepsake? So we partnered with Nick to license his artwork to put on our keep cards because we thought it was a really good way to have a pocket full of Hawaii. And also, we knew walking into it, these were going to go home. We were never going to see them again. So, Nick's art is beautiful, right? It merchandises at his studio and retail shop in Kailua. You see them at farmers markets, at Made in Hawaii. But for visitors who might not get a chance to do that or might not have the ability to do so by virtue of price point, this offered them a way to take a little piece of Diamond Head and the like home with them. Now, the marketing of this actually took the key card out in the wild. So this diamond head or leahi reel that you see is actually, we pull away from that and there is the silhouette of leahi in the background. So we wanted people to know that this was a really literal representation of what they could take home with them. And then, of course, we continue to work with Nick on various projects, including an effort to try to get and invite our guests to go out to his studio in Kailua. This brings the kind of the second point of, in Waikiki alone, we have nearly 4,000 hotel rooms just between my 4 hotels, which means at any given time we have, about 10,000 people, right? You think you stay in a hotel room, you come with your family and the like. That's a lot of people that are all looking for things to do, places to go, and the like. And though some of them do want the ease of a tour and that type of thing, quite a number of them are actually second or third or very loyal visitors to the islands. And they all want to know what are the local businesses and creatives that they can support that allow them to, engage with the local communities a little bit and to potentially bring a piece of Hawaii home. The last example that I'll share is one that was born out of a couple different ways of being introduced to a partner. So there is a small business called Paradise Monarchs. Now, Paradise Monarchs was formed or created by a former catering manager for a Oahu hotel that during the pandemic kind of went out on his own and started to cultivate butterflies, the chrysalises, and then ultimately sell them for different things, whether it's wedding releases or at farmers markets and the like. So we met this small business not only because we were aware of the business owner through the industry, right? He used to work in hotels, but also we knew that he was gaining traction on social media. And so what we did was we brought him into the Moana Surfrider, where we have done afternoon tea since 1901. And when you do afternoon tea since 1901, you sometimes have to think of different ways to refresh it 100 years later. So in the Grand Salon of the Moana Surfrider, he brings this enormous tent into the space, installs it once a month, and has butterflies that fly throughout the Moana tent. And so our guests of tea time can walk into the space. They can learn a little bit about butterflies and their benefits to the environment. They can purchase a butterfly chrysalis, which ultimately hatches a couple days later. And then we do a butterfly release under the historic Moana banyan tree about 12 noon on that day. There's a couple pieces of this that I really like about this partnership. The first is you see some of the local media coverage of this. The second is you're seeing some of the local influencers that we brought in collaboration with Paradise Monarchs. The reel on the right alone is, I think, nearly 92,000 views. The one in the middle is somewhere around 25,000 today, continues to gain traction, which is a benefit both for us as well as for Paradise Monarchs. So in this particular space, we can offer the support of mutually beneficial public relations. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that it's rooted in something that the hotels are already doing, but just want to shift a different way, right? As we look at different partners and different ways to tell the stories. So 3 kind of in-market examples today, as well as the marketing that surrounds those partnerships. And then what I think the one kind of key message to take away from all of this is it's really rooted in a small business understanding which hotel they're pitching and knowing that there's brand alignment, right, between the two. And it doesn't have to be perfect, right? It doesn't have to be necessarily that your branding or look and feel is like one of our hotels. But when you think about the type of guest that we have in our hotels on any given time, we're really looking for partnerships that drive revenue and or guest experience. And so sometimes those experiences are on property, sometimes they're off property, but they are started, and the ones that stick are the ones where the brands really click in a very natural way. Oftentimes, we look for those to be as exclusive as possible, right? So we try not to have a ton of partners, but the ones that we have, probably like Ha'aheo, we try to keep really close to our heart and try to do a lot with. And make sure that they last for, as Ha'a said, years, not just kind of a flash in the pan one-offs.
Allison, okay, so same question I put to Ha'aheo. How does someone with an activity or product get across your desk? Like, what's the path to that?
It's funny because it's oftentimes in the ways that you least expect. I was at Manoa Marketplace with my daughter, waiting for her to finish kumon, and I was talking, with one of the parents who had a small business, an agency actually, that has done work in the past. And so just in striking up a conversation, kind of got to know what they were doing and the like, and got familiar with that. That type of organic, talk story in a garage, talk story with your neighbor kind of thing is more often than not one of the more natural ways that we learn about our coolest partnerships. It's your neighbors, it's your friends. There are structured industry methods of connecting, right? There's a Hawaii Visitor and Convention Bureau. There's various kind of industry events that you can kind of go to and connect with, whether you're a hotel operator or a different type of partner. But more often than not, it is either a local in-person connection that you meet or have a chance to be introduced to, and or what we're seeing on social media, right? There are incredible creatives that are doing great things. And just by virtue of where our guests are, we too have to spend quite a bit of time on social media, and are often looking for small businesses that are doing different and unique things. So don't get me wrong, we are, our hotel teams are at Made in Hawaii Festival. They're looking for small business owners that can do amenities. All of that is part and parcel of the research that we do to highlight local vendors. But those chance encounters on the playground are certainly helpful too.
Kalani?
Yeah, I think I would just add two other opportunities. One is the Hawaii Tourism Authority hosts the Hawaii Tourism Conference in the fall every year. We usually do an expo, and so it's another way. We try to keep those fees really, really nominal, just to cover base cost as an entry point. I think the other one is our spring tourism update that we do in spring as well, are two state-sponsored from our perspective to sort of get your foot in the door. I think I just really want to enforce the notion that is not unknown, but I just want to enforce how important it is. It's building relationships. I know that sort of seems cliche, but I mean it, right? So whether you're part of a member-based organization or whatever it is, show up to the industry events, show up to the charity walk, show up to Pride, show up to whatever it is, show up to Travel Weekly. And to the call for this panel. Because when you start to make the relationships, that's where the hey, Allison, I think there's somebody that does something in Waikiki. He was showing me pictures of Saturn from Waikiki Beach this morning, right? So there's these really cool experiences that happen because you're present. And so I think showing up and building relationships is, yeah.
And then I'd also highlight that there are organizations that are key pathways into the hotels in particular. There are vendors like Avendra who are just an amalgamation of approved, authenticated products. And so you can meet a lot of them at trade shows. I can't think of the name of the last trade show that was held at the Blaisdell, but that's a really great
hotel and restaurant show.
Right. That's a great opportunity to just meet some of these individuals who do have direct pathways to our hotels. We're going to go back to Kalani, and normally I would say someone who needs no introduction, but we can give him a second one because Kalani, in addition to his role as the Chief Stewardship Officer for the Hawaii Tourism Authority, has had many roles there. He has been key in the redevelopment of the Hawaii Tourism Authority over the last, how many years? 10.
No, 8.
8 years in terms of the direction they've taken in pursuit of a more regenerative, authentic experience and a more stewarded destination. In addition to all of that, Kalani served as the chair of the 13th FestPAC Commission. And so we hosted the 2024 Festival of the Pacific. That was a massive lift and a significant economic driver, not just for Hawaii, but also for Pacific peoples across the ocean. And like he mentioned earlier, I was going to talk a bit about the strategic plan, but you've already hit it. So based on your large lens and your long-term experience and vision within the Hawaii Tourism Authority, I think now's a great time to talk about how businesses who are looking to scale can engage directly with HTA in pursuit of that growth.
Sure. So I think this whole notion of this FTA, to use an acronym because it's very government of us, is really the commitment to that. Is how do we provide as the government the opportunities for you all to engage more with this industry? Because I think if we are professing and encouraging and incentivizing a shift in how we do tourism, we have to build that from the ground up. And so we know it's starts with small business owners. We know it's smart, why do I keep saying smart? It's because you guys smart. It starts with communities. It starts with this really grassroots level, which I think is a change, right? I think there was a perception probably about a decade ago at HTA, and I'm talking about us internally, of sort of we're the leaders of and the conveners of. And I think that that's still true, but the how we do that is important. And so I think, again, a lot of our time is spent listening. We got 2 ears, 1 mouth. And so how do we make sure that we're finding every moment that we can to listen to our residents? One of the things that we do is a ton of research. So I want to just say the first resource that you should be taking advantage of, the state of Hawaii probably spends north of $4 million every year on tourism-related research. Who the customers are, where they're coming from, what they're interested in, what their demographic background is, what their travel patterns are, when is their intent to travel, or like when do they intend to travel, what islands are they looking to travel to. All of that is publicly available to you because it is paid for with tax dollars. So if you're not on the HawaiiTourismAuthority.org website and looking at our research page, there's data that's released monthly, quarterly, annually, special research that's one-off. It's all there. And so I want to just make sure you know that that resource is free and available to you. We have an amazing director of tourism research. Her name is Jennifer Chun. Her and her team are fantastic. If you have a specific question, just ask her and she'll be really upfront. She'll say, yes, I have that research, or no, I don't. And what happens is as more of you access this research, it shapes what she does in future years. And so use that research to enhance your offering, enhance what you're doing. Or if you were thinking about starting something new, being able to do it as a data-driven endeavor, I think sets you up for some great success. I think the next thing I would say is, really our convening power is really something important for us at HTA. How do we make sure we bring the right people to the table to figure out whatever is going on? Now, in certain circumstances, our work deals with hotspots, and there are too many tourists going to one place with the incorrect infrastructure, not the right education, etc. And so how do you really put everybody in the room that needs to work on that? So we often convene working groups and task forces and all these things that sound very government-y, but really are effective in addressing an issue. And I'll just speak to my own in Kailua, because that's where I was born and raised. Kailua Beach Park has had challenges with the volume of visitors going and people on bikes riding in the middle of the road and buses and illegal commercial activity and all the things.
Feeding pigeons.
People feeding pigeons. He's moved, Anyway, that's all. Tyler's also from Kailua. There's this brother that used to drive this blue car, and he used to feed pigeons, and he would hold his hands out in the middle of the water, and it was a whole thing. Anyway, sorry. ADD, brah. Focus. See, what was I talking about? Oh, Kailua, over-tourism. Got it. Okay, I'm back. There was the city council banned commercial activity in Kailua Beach Park. It was one of the first beach parks in the county to do that. In the very early days, there was miscommunication between the Public Utilities Commission, who regulates motor vehicle carriers that carry tourists to places, HPD in terms of enforcement of the law, and then the law proper. And so I think what we were able to do as the HTA is to work with elected representatives, the regulatory agencies, the businesses, and put them all in a room and got it all sorted out. Because what was happening is people weren't being cited for the illegal activity in the park because HPD wasn't clear about what the boundaries of the law were and weren't. And then the PUC wasn't sure what their role was as a regulator of motor vehicle carriers. And so all of that got sorted out in a meeting. And so I think that's one example. We do a lot of that destination management work to try to solve these hotspot issues. What I also think is our superpower is being able to convene groups like you who are really going to be the future of what we want to see. So how can we support you in whatever you're doing to make Hawaii's industry, visitor industry, sustainable over time? And like we talked about it a little bit earlier, it's the little big things, right? It's the little things that add up. But I think the first role we had and what we've really been endeavoring to do, at least in my 8 years, and really in particular the last 4, is really awakening our minds to the possibilities of what could be, and what we can do, and giving some hope back to many who felt defeated by tourism and who feel overwhelmed by tourism, and there's a lot of emotion around it. And so again, our residents have told us time and time again that the best way to change their perception of tourism is by listening to them and giving them a greater voice in tourism making decisions. And so it's convenings like this that help us do that. Did I talk about what I was supposed to talk about?
Well, I was going to continue to lead you down that path. So,
Okay.
you know, market research is huge, especially for small businesses. It's also super expensive, right? And so going back to what Allison was saying about knowing the demographic that you're targeting knowing your audience in particular, HTA has the most significant repository of visitor related data, and it's free and accessible on the website. And I mean, we're going to come to Justin eventually, but I think this all plays into the idea about marketing and sales and how small businesses can better position themselves by really knowing that data in your bones, because it'll drive not only your decision making, but the story of your brand, what your value proposition is, and why you're a strong contender for why a hotel or any other entity should partner with you. Kalani, we're just talking about partnerships, but also listening to the audience, not the audience, listening to the community. And a question that came in was basically about how the community can help guide the future of HTA's vision for destination stewardship, and how you work with people in the industry and beyond to change your organizational structure and plans to better accommodate that. And I think maybe if we can tie that back into how small businesses play out therein, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I'll say the first, my door is always open. That's the first and easiest path. I'm all ears. I'm always willing to listen. We may not always agree, but I'm always happy to listen and learn from members of our community. The second is when we do these outreach processes, like the Destination Management Action Plan, the STRAT plan, just understand that we're government, and that's the mechanism and the model of how some of this happens. And so being able to participate in that process, we try to provide multiple ways to get your feedback is important. For all the research firms in this room and outside of this room, you know those really irritating survey calls? We actually listen to them. So participating in surveys and actually taking that 2-minute survey is an important way for us to get that feedback, because we can't be everywhere all the time. And then I would say the last part is just what you've done today, is showing up and being present, because we'll always listen. So yeah.
Great. So on that note, coming back to this idea about marketing and sales, we're going to move to our next speaker, Justin Nakahiki, who is the Managing Director of Destination Marketing Hawaii. He has worked in and around advertising, marketing, sales for over 20 years. You've worked with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. You are a small business owner yourself. You represent over 30 top U.S. and international publications, including Travel Weekly, which is a very prominent publication. And you have the B2B perspective, right? You understand how businesses work with one another versus, direct to consumer sales. And so I think we're a little excited to hear about, one, how marketing and sales can play into small businesses, early stage small businesses who might not have that vision and completeness of a sales tactic, but also how they can work in the B2B realm in order to improve their standing in the industry.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. So my background, again, as he's mentioned, is marketing and sales. Spent a little bit of time in the hotel industry and just a litany of things. But one of the sort of first things that I sort of approach when I'm sitting with clients, especially with sort of startups or maybe people that are venturing in or are planning to expand their current offering, is when approaching the visitor industry, where does your product fit in? How does it enhance a visitor's experience here? I think, to echo some of my colleagues, where in the supply chain do you belong? There's a lot of these questions that you have to ask yourself sort of when you're first entering or approaching the industry itself. And I want to actually just sort of encourage those conversations to happen, because there's going to be, I'll be very honest, there's going to be lots of conversations that you're going to need to have. And some of them may or may not be a green light, a pause, or a redirect. But with that, I would say sort of just stay with it, because you're also fine-tuning where you fit into the industry itself. So what I sort of do on a marketing level is I work with the different global markets. I specifically work with English-speaking markets for the visitor markets, and I reach out to media companies to put together programs that, say, hoteliers, airlines, et cetera, want to do what we call pre-arrival marketing to encourage them to come here. Now, there's also a whole other ecosystem of things where, okay, he had mentioned the B2B side of things. Well, there's travel advisors. And while everyone sort of is with the notion of like, oh, does a travel advisor or travel agent still exist? They do. And I would say a lot of them actually is an opportunity, because they're not looking to book standard vacations for people. They want unique experiences, which can include services and products by the local community. So there's that aspect of who is your audience and where do you fit in. I believe Hale mentioned you talk to a restaurant manager, maybe you become part of the supply chain. Allison had mentioned artwork, maybe you're a local artist. Maybe you become part of the guest rooms itself or part of the product, that way that you can fit into that aspect. There's numerous ways of approaching these things, and I can understand why sometimes it's a little overwhelming. You know, to be sort of candid, the visitor industry or the tourism and travel industry is very large, but as Kalani mentioned, there's so many facets of it that you can fit in or play a part of or a role of, or actually even help what was my train of thought? Help shape for the future. So that's sort of like where my recommendation is. First and foremost, where do you fit in and where do you want to fit in? And maybe you're going to have conversations with large hotels that maybe for whatever reasons are unable to accommodate the partnership. The other thing that I wanted to sort of point out was look at your colleagues within the room. These are sort of the best forums to talk story with somebody who's sitting next to you. Maybe you guys have complementary services or products that you can actually hui together and go in for a larger bid for something that you can actually keep up with the demand that is required for that. So it's continual conversations, and it's staying true to who you are and what you want to offer out there, but you also need to learn how to probably be a little bit flexible. I know I had to learn very quickly, just in a very high level. I sort of took on this role. 2020 was going to be the year where it was officially transitioned. I acquired an existing company, and that was it. And then, you know, like just this global thing happened. And then I was kind of sitting there going like, okay, what are we going to do? My company also puts together an event that's hosted at one of Allison's properties. That was the first thing to go. There was no events, no in-person. There was no virtual component of it that we could do. So we had to just wait it out for a few years. But, you know, those are sort of like my recommendations, just assessing who and what you do and what you want to offer to this industry, you know, that's fulfilling for yourself as well. The second part is, Jen loves me because I bug her all the time. I'm like, what if we look at the data this way? Can you do it this way? And she's like, I'm not going to bend the data to your will, Justin. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? But there is a plethora of information in there. And yes, it is a lot. But part of what has sort of evolved in the last few years is that they have these really straightforward dashboards that gives you just a snapshot of where people are moving, where geographically is a potential hotspot, where your opportunity may be, and think beyond, you know, Waikiki, yes, is a large sort of pool of people that could be clients of yours or customers, but there are also other aspects that you may find down the line that maybe you made friends with the local coffee shop owner, and you might actually be able to fit in that way. that's maybe outside of Waikiki. But you're still reaching the visitor market, so just sort of think of it that way.
You know, aesthetics play a huge role in, securing that deal, right? I think a lot of established brands who are looking for a partner want something that offers great value, but also has a certain look to it. Haheo, you guys did a massive rebrand when you reopened Kaimana. Do you want to talk a little bit about developing the aesthetic vision for what that looks like and how you guys figured it out?
Yeah, a small group of us sat around a dinner table very early on, probably 4 years ago, if not earlier, and tried to devise a guest list to invite to that dinner, and who would you want to invite? What type of areas or different things that you wanted to represent? So, did you want an artist? Did you want a hula dancer? Did you want just trying to create like what would be our ideal guest demographic, whether it be kama'aina, right, or someone that's coming from the continent. And so once we had an idea of the type of guests that we wanted to entertain or the type of guests that we wanted to welcome to the property, we partnered with Welcome Stranger, who's a local branding house. Welcome Stranger is Jesse Arneson and Scott Na'awao. And we were one of their first partnerships that I think really helped evolve and put them on the map. After Kaimana, they went on and did work with Wayfinder and White Sands, who also used the Vanguard theory, and so that was, we're super fortunate to partner with a local branding house, but we're even more fortunate to be able to have different partners to help help devise what that looked like. We also partnered with Kai Salas, who is a local celebrity in his own right. He is the current WSL longboard champ, and he and his team won gold at the recent ISL World Championships. And so he has a surf school that he's had in Waikiki and also out on the west side for about 10 years, and also has a line of longboards. And so, having that partnership, having people that are experts in branding, and then having an idea of the type of guests that we wanted to invite into the hotel, I think was the way that we got to where we are.
Highlight that because I think, especially for small businesses, hiring a graphic designer or a consultant for image is, again, this is another not cheap item. Definitely came up in the needs assessment we performed for Kalani, figuring out what small businesses want, right? Some of it is branding help. And so I think what Haheo was talking about, I think Gen Z calls it collabs, but marketers talk about it in terms of just capitalizing on partnerships to leverage other audiences. And so I just wanted to highlight that because, the audience may not know about who is your
Welcome Stranger.
Welcome Stranger. They may not know about Library Collective or the many other companies, but I think figuring out who your audience is and then working your way towards trying to leverage, social capital to try and build a brand is a way around, having to hire a graphic designer if that's not the stage that your business is at. Justin, can you talk a little bit about, in terms of marketing and sales, once you mentioned pre-arrival, but how big is the market once the visitor has arrived in state?
So let me just rephrase that in my thought process. That is actually huge market, and actually probably is what I would say the bulk of the businesses sort of address. When I talk about pre-arrival, is that when in their home, their marketing, it's usually hotels, airlines, destination level, sort of macro level things, and then they're here, right? So then you also need to stand out within sort of the static and noise, because there's a lot of things being thrown at them. Everyone wants that, right? visitor dollar. So again, there are many avenues from a traditional marketing and advertising standpoint, but what I like to sort of get creative with is, again, where are you in the supply chain? Do you need to be a direct consumer brand, or are you more of a wholesale level brand where you find resellers? You know, I think you mentioned Avendra, which is basically, I don't even know how to categorize them. They're probably going to be like, well, you should know us. They're like a conglomerate that sort of like puts together all of the supply chain stuff for hotels and large businesses. But again, I asked the question is, do you want to be, what part of the supply chain do you want to be a part of? Like, do you want to be that brand that walks up and needs a storefront at Kaua? Or are you okay going into a pop-up market? Are you okay being sort of just the item that is an everyday use, but it's high volume, and guess what? Every guest needs it. They need key cards. They need, you know, and then creatively sort of putting the artwork, and that's how an artist sort of gets their sort of, you know, spotlight. But to go back to your question, the post-arrival, what we call in-market, is very large. There are many facets. I think too many to name, but I guess that would be more of a question for the business owner themselves. Where do they want to play their part in that sort of visitor experience, and how does that enhance their stay or time here?
Yeah, and then Kalani?
Just add, because understanding it's an ecosystem, and so in case you're not familiar, I think it's just a good level set. Generally, and you guys keep me honest, generally speaking, HTA as a destination on behalf of the state will do marketing. So, sorry, I should also quantify why I can talk about this. For the last 3 years, I served as our chief brand officer. I was responsible for all of our global marketing in 7 source markets, including Europe, Canada, domestically within the United States, South Korea, Japan, China, and Oceania, which includes New Zealand and Australia. So I had purview over all of that. What I think is important to understand is the system that you're going to be in. So the state of Hawaii will spend probably the least amount of money out of anybody in marketing in Hawaii. Roughly around $40 million every single year is really at the high end of the funnel. And some people have moved beyond the funnel, and we can talk about circular things. And sorry, I know we're laughing, but sorry, some of the people in government still work with the funnel. The funnel now has a hose, and it connects back to the top of the funnel is the best way I can describe it. But know that in the pre-arrival space that Justin was talking about, we spend a lot of energy in introducing people to the Hawaiian Islands as a whole. And we spend a lot of time and energy in making them aware and keeping top of mind the Hawaiian Islands. And then at another level and layer within that funnel, different partners are competing for conversion. And that's really the space that I think there's some static and there's a lot of differentiation that needs to happen. And so you've got to kind of understand that that's the ecosystem you're playing in. And then the post-arrival side, which Kilohana actually helps us with, is very direct, like, hey, these festivals and events are happening this week. Please stop touching monk seals. Stay away from the damn turtles. Please go shop at your local farmer's market. You know, there's all of the different range of messages that happen in that space. But I just want you to know that your tax dollars are spent at that high level in the brand awareness space. And we do what we would call more brand marketing as opposed to like conversion, hardcore, come stay at my place, fly on my airplane, do this thing with me. And we stay at a different level of come to the Hawaiian Islands.
I want to add, as a plug for Kalani, since he didn't plug it himself, HTA just launched a program called Curator, which is quality assurance program that is a free opportunity to market, right? And so you sign up, you complete 150 to 300 yes or no questions, you get a certification.
He lied. It's 300. Do all 300.
Do it all. It's very simple and fast. It doesn't require anything other than a yes, no, or not applicable. And then you get certified and you get badges, and you can learn more about it at curator.travel. That's curator.travel. But the reason I bring it up is because it's an absolutely free way to market yourselves, right? And the idea is that the Hawaii Tourism Authority is going to sink a little bit of money into broadcasting that as a tool to our visitors to appreciate what businesses have been validated and authenticated by the Hawaii Tourism Authority. And since it's very early in the launch of that program, it's a very thin layer of certified individuals right now. So the visibility for early adopters is a lot higher. And I think for a small business, it's scaled in such a way that small businesses can be scored on an equal footing as any other established business. So that's something to consider in terms of low cost opportunities to market and brand yourself.
And I would just add, so once you get certified at any tier and whichever badges you qualify for, HTA will essentially give you the collateral to put on your business materials. But we'll also on gohawaii.com, which is the state's main visitor-facing website, there's a directory of local businesses, experiences, all that stuff. In the search results, we prioritize curator-certified businesses. So just like Google as a search engine will prioritize certain search results, on our website proper, we do the same. And so we make sure that those who have made a commitment to Hawaii, whose values are brand aligned with ours, like Allison was talking about, where that alignment exists, we will prioritize those search results. And so again, that's free because we're the state and we provide it to business owners like you. Thanks.
Awesome. I want to talk a little bit about the multiplier effect, Kalani. So I'm going to throw this back to you. A question came in about the multiplier effect, but specifically, can you address how it generates a higher total of economic variables that increase spending amongst our visitors?
Okay, and if I don't answer the question to the asker of the question, I'm sorry, but what I think is being asked is, I talked a little bit earlier about how tourism can be catalytic. I think what I mean by that is within our industry, in and of itself, just doing the business of tourism, we're able to support other industries. But I also think within the visitor industry, there's different segments, right? And so you might have a 5-star property or a 3-star property. You might have a FIT traveler, a free independent traveler, which is somebody just going on vacation by themselves. They didn't book a tour with somebody and they're not in this group. But we also have MICE or MCI, meetings, conventions, and incentives. And we know that MICE travelers or MCI or convention travelers tend to stay longer. They add pre and post days to their trip. They often spend more than an FIT traveler. And so there is a multiplier effect in that way. When I think about when we actually incentivize partnerships like with the LA Clippers, and the LA Clippers come to do their preseason camp in Hawaii, the LA Clippers paid for a new computer lab at Washington Middle, and then they're doing clinics on the neighbor islands, and they're doing all these different things. There's this community benefit, but we also know that people travel to Hawaii for that event and will come for that game or the Maui Invitational or the Merry Monarch or whatever it is. And so if I'm following the question right, there is this multiplier effect of things that we do that can continue to increase the spend for visitors and make sure that it's spent in businesses like yours that are small and local owned.
Awesome. Justin, this question came in for you. Are there low-cost opportunities or perhaps collaborations that already exist to help market and connect folks who are on the smaller end of, or on the earlier stage of startup for small businesses?
Like you had just mentioned, that curator program, that is a perfect example of sort of leveraging, hooing together cooperative marketing dollars. And there's many that exist. I put together a lot of marketing co-op programs for even some of my partners, because then we can sort of share in the advertising costs and the reach. First and foremost, it's literally, again, where does the product fit into the visitor's experience? And should you be reaching out directly to consumers, like one-on-one, or as Kalani had mentioned, the meetings market? I think that's a great example. Meeting planners tend to look for amenities and some of these trips are based on incentive and they want unique products or services, so they will reach out to local artisans and things. Again, that's not a direct consumer, like a walk-up, retail situation, but they'll maybe order a dozen of your item, and that you can sort of get them on a contract and sort of work that on an ongoing basis. But again, that's not like your usual, okay, here's an ad, click on it, and things like that. So I keep, and I apologize if I keep deferring back to this, is like, where do you want your product to fit in, and how do you want to best leverage what you have? Because not even large entities have unlimited marketing funds. on a sort of global level, Hawaii, just keep this in mind, from a marketing spend, we compete with countries that have 20 times over marketing dollars to do the reach that they reach. So even as a state, we're competing on a global landscape of really utilizing the marketing funds wisely and very efficiently. Same thing that trickles down to a small business owner. So, again, I may not have a specific answer. It's sort of like, it really depends on where you want to fit into the ecosystem of your product or service for the visitor industry.
Do you mind if I chime in there? So when Justin references these meetings that come in, right? Meeting and incentive trips, people that are traveling to Hawaii because their company or an organization is paying for them to come here. That market for a small business can actually be incredible. Sometimes it's a dozen, sometimes it's a couple dozen, sometimes it's several hundred. At a very attractive price point because they want to welcome their guests to Hawaii with something that's meaningful. The entry to that space is either in the destination management companies, which are companies that are not necessarily tour groups. They actually put together the entire program from start to finish for these attendees. So the company contracts with the destination management company to take care of their guests from how they're going to get from their home to Hawaii to all of their ground transportation, what welcomes them, their meals, etc. And there are a couple of very big ones in Hawaii that are absolutely incredible. So destination management companies, are DMCs, as they're known, are a great entry into that space. And then the other kind of thing to kind of think about when you are looking at low to no cost opportunities is actually in the space of public relations. We can spend millions of dollars in advertising and it won't compete with the media value of one enormous press hit. So to do that, this is funny because as a marketer, I would say branding is super important, but the more important thing to that is actually knowing what your story is. So knowing what your company is, who's the founder, right? There's a tremendous amount of interest from media as to who owns the company, how many years have you been in business, how many generations have you been in business, and what makes your product different than anything else is worth its weight in gold. Because we often say that whatever we spend in media dollars cannot compare to what we can get in terms of the credibility of a great press hit. Now, for those of you who have a product, products are amazing, right? They're really great in terms of what we call commerce editors, top 10 things to buy or ship from Hawaii, those kinds of things. But what you're really going to get more traction on is the experience. So I'm going to use the poha berry jam example, right? So if you have a small business that makes poha jam, I'm sure it's delicious, right? That's awesome. If you have a poha jam recipe that's been passed down from your grandma, that's amazing. If your poha berries are gathered at your family's farm and you welcome 10 guests once a week to actually pick poha berry with you and make the recipe that has been passed down from generation to generation, and then you do talk story afterwards and you all eat, poha jam on croissants or something like that. That's where we're really seeing the benefit, to go beyond the product to the experience and make it as authentic as possible. What we do on our side, what the HVCB PR team does, what the various different partners do, we fly in meeting planners, we fly in media, and we will actually broker that invitation to go and make poha jam with you. Because it's one thing to put it in the room, it's very different for us to send them to your place of business and have them experience it. So while you might have a product that's fantastic, how can you go beyond that to make sure that either the content producer or the writer or whoever is coming in has a way to interact with your product in a way that's really different? And then how do you commensurately give that experience to guests that might be in town and looking to do something a little bit different that's not just hanging out on the beach or something like that? So very different ways to maximize the visitor industry, whether it is in selling a product or it's actually in leveraging reach.
I just add there's a lot of excitement exactly around that point. People are looking for meaningful experiences. Well-being is really big right now. And so sometimes like even stuff that might seem odd to us at first, just at first blush, like forest bathing, which is literally just going and sitting in the forest, is really popular for people, and they will travel for that experience. So just know that like even setting aside some of your own bias sometimes is important to understand what your customer is looking for. You know, in HTA, we get a lot of pressure that we need to be speaking to residents. And I said, they're not my audience. As a marketer, my audience is the prospective traveler. We call them the mindful Hawaii traveler. And we have a little bit of a definition change over different markets, but in the US, generally speaking, it's 34 to 54, an average household income of 150,000, and has psychographic like indicators that really align with our values of malama and aloha and wanting to care for a place, that are education oriented, meaning they're willing to learn and open to learn. They want to experience new culture, cuisine, language, etc. And so we try to make sure that we're very targeted in that. I want to bounce back to the MCI side a little bit. Some of what also might be a diversification for you is knowing that your story as an entrepreneur and small business owner is something that people want to hear about. And so if the conference is the Small Business Administration Western Regional Meeting, they're looking for speakers and will pay for speakers to come share their experiences at their conference. And so really the possibilities are endless. And so yes, you might have a product or service, but sometimes your story and your personal brand are also available to and want to be heard from different orgs coming to Hawaii. We have Pokemon coming in, is it this week, next week? This week, right? Pokemon, everybody know Pokemon, the game? This convention center in a few days will be an absolute zoo of people catching Pokemon. But part of what they wanted to do was understand local natural resources and flora and fauna and understand what the threats to that is and invasive species and all of that stuff. And so just like, I'm just trying to open the aperture here, right? I really want you to open your minds that like you have a personal brand, you have a personal story, and sometimes that can get you revenue and that can get you in the door. And when you speak at that conference, then somebody heard you speak and then they want to buy your product or they want to book your experience. And so just know that getting your foot in the door has a bunch of different ways to happen.
Speaking of DMCs, as Allison was mentioning, my very first job was at a DMC. That was Wheel and Associates, which is now PRA. But another really great DMC, Mary Charles and Associates, Kanoik and Unad, they are part of the resource fair that's happening outside at 12. So if you have never spoken to a DMC before, this is a great opportunity to think about what your product is because they're always looking for amenities. That's one thing that they do. And many of the incentive groups that will come in, they'll want different amenities every night of the trip. And they'll want, within each night, they'll want a range, right? They'll want Maui gyms and a cookie and something else. And so this is a really great opportunity to speak to a DMC about, you know, you've got either an experience because they're always looking for activity sales, or you've got a product. That's Allison raises a really great point. So I think MCNAs will be outside. This question came in for Haheo and Allison. We talked a little bit about forming organic relationships that lead to collaboration so that people can get into the hotel. But on the retail side, how do I get on your shelves if I'm not big enough to work with an Avendra or a Vanguard?
For retail products? We had the fortunate ability to create our own shop on property. It's called Sunset Provisions. We created our own brand. It has coffee, but we also set out to ensure that the assortment was uniquely local. And whether it be local designers or even Pono Potions is a perfect example. Peter and Michael have this line of syrups that use natural ingredients and honor the host culture, whether it be macadamia or different things that they offer. But that was a perfect example of us using their syrups in our beverage offering, and now they have stood up a whole retail line of items that we also now carry in the store.
Allison, in addition to answering how do I get on your shelves, can you talk a little bit about a time, because you were talking about it in your poha jam example, but is there any product where the mo'olelo or the story around the product was what compelled you to work with that partner or promote that partner?
Definitely. To this piece about retail, one thing that I feel very fortunate about in the 4 hotels that are in Waikiki is that our ownership group has a philosophy of having leased spaces that are local businesses. So for the most part, within the Royal Hawaiian, the Moana Surfrider, Sheraton Princess Kai'olani, and Sheraton Waikiki, you are intentionally not going to see any big box or continent retailers. You're going to see a lot of local small businesses. And so for us, the conduit to that space is actually to work directly with the small business. So this is where that B2B space comes in really handy, and where networking at industry events becomes important, because people like, or companies like Honolulu Coffee Company, have retail space throughout our hotels, right? And having a partnership with them, having a co-branded product with them can sometimes make sure that you ultimately get on the shelves of our retail spaces. And then there are obviously buyers, right, that help with the Lawsons of the world and the like. But those are, for our hotels at least, it's very much a B2B facilitation and a space that isn't often talked about, right? Specific to the story being more just as compelling, right, as anything else, I would actually defer to a startup Hawaiian jewelry brand called HTA Hawaii. So this is a brand that's owned by Meliana Estes and Noel Shaw. And is making Hawaiian bracelets at a very luxury price point that is launched maybe about 2.5 years ago. The reason why the Hie Hawaii story is compelling is it's owned by 2 female entrepreneurs who have quite a bit of history with the kind of Kama'aina families and the like, but also are using patterning that harken back to one of their ancestors actually being a very close confidant of the court. And so when we look at patterning, each of their patterns are very intentional and very personal. So not only is the company itself a kind of strong brand story, but each of their products itself has its own mini story within it. Now, what we were able to do with them is actually offer kind of a pop-up atelier experience. So not a public pop-up. It was actually a private shopping experience, similar to what Ha'a does. And you have partnered with them in the past as well. But one of the things that we do is have media come in and interact with them. So not necessarily a open to the public shopping event, but very private one-on-one appointments, and then have media come in to learn a little bit about the craftsmanship that goes into every one of the pieces. That is a pretty good example of where the brand itself was so new that it didn't necessarily have a whole lot of reputation, right, when we look at alignment. But we knew that the story itself was one that was going to resonate specifically for the Royal Hawaiian, where we have a luxury traveler, right? And so we're looking at the price point of the partner's product. We're looking at the price point of our own hotel rooms to make sure that we have audiences that are similar and are not going to feel like, oh, that's like something that I wouldn't necessarily engage in, right? So when you have 4 hotels that have very different audiences and demographics, you can do that because we usually can find a pretty good brand alignment at various different household incomes.
I think that was super great because I think small business owners will think of themselves as a female entrepreneur-owned business or a Native Hawaiian-owned business or a Kama'aina-owned business, but weaving that back into the story of why your product has an edge, why it's special, is sort of on that business development side of taking yourself beyond or uncoupling yourself from this like idea you have of this is why I'm great, but telling a really good story as part of it. Justin, the next question came
I
in.
was going to build off of that real quick.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So kind of like the nuts and bolts of it, what's the low cost sort of methodology is literally go down to the Sheraton Waikiki, go get yourself a beverage from a local purveyor, and just observe. And you'll notice, okay, Sheraton Waikiki, I want to get into their retail. Oh, wait, these are small business owners. Maybe they will have a space for me and I can partner with them to have my products in that space. So that's, again, on a B2B level, but also just taking the time, and the only cost is your time to see where it all fits into this ecosystem and where people move and where visitors go. That's one of the sort of like nice things, is that you can actually see for yourself and imagine where your product can be placed.
Okay, Justin, next question is for you. For customers coming from Asia, do you handle the Asian market?
I do not, but I can speak to it best as I can.
Well, if not Asia, then
What was the question?
for customers coming from Asia,
Yeah.
what does the outlook look like for 2025?
25. Let me just say this. I think full recovery is pushed off to 26 in the last quarterly DBED forecast. I think some of the constraints, again, are like if we're talking about Japan as a primary source market for us from Asia, in particular, the dollar strength is an impediment to the return of Japanese travelers. Incentivizing domestic travel by Japan has been an impact for us, as well as some other constraints. So I think in terms of Japan, that's the quick and dirty of that. When we think about China, there's no direct air service anymore. And some of the political tensions, I think, are making that a bit difficult. But again, we're trying to get creative in terms of how do we attract them maybe as a second stop in their trip, right? So they might make a direct flight from Beijing to LA, and they might do LA for a few days, but then we ask them to come out here to Hawaii. And so it's an indirect way to try to make the best situation possible. But tail end of 26 at the moment.
Awesome. And something that just came to me about low-cost opportunities, membership organizations, really simple. Hawaii Lodging and Tourism Association, I'm not sure what their fee is. Same for HVCB. Native Hawaiian Hospitality Association, they're in the room right now. And the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement. You don't need to be a Native Hawaiian organization to be a member of CNHA, but all of these, like the chambers, they all become echo chambers for the rumor mill of like what business is hot up and coming and is worth taking a shot on. So I think maximizing your exposure on a low cost way really is trying to join a lot of these organizations. Okay, this question I think Justin can help us answer is, how does the marketing strategy look, or how does it differ between pre and post?
The quick and sort of short answer is pre is we're encouraging them to come here, to choose Hawaii as a destination versus the world. And post is, okay, now you're in market, you're going to compete with your friendly neighbors if you have similar products, and how yours best suits their needs now that they've arrived here. So that's sort of the quick and dirty answer of it.
Tyler, specific to the Japan piece, one thing that is actually happening is, even though Japan might not necessarily, Japanese travelers might not be coming back to Hawaii in the same volume as 2019, it doesn't mean that that market doesn't love and miss Hawaii so much. Every time we're in market there, I know this is the same for Kalani as well, it is absolutely incredible to hear how fond they are and how much they miss our culture. And so one thing that small businesses can do is actually partner to be in market in Japan. It's happening, actually happened last week at Hankyu Umeda, which is in Osaka. They do one of the largest Hawaii fairs. There are something like 36 local small business owners that flew to Osaka to do a massive pop-up where they sold their products. We have activated the cafe there for the past 3 years, serving everything from Pink Palace pancakes to acai bowls. And really, there's a tremendous amount of merchandise. That's not just unique to Osaka. There are activations throughout Tokyo and up and down from the north to south. Mana Up activated at Haneda Airport last December, one of the most successful Haneda pop-ups that they've ever had. So there are incredible opportunities to get product into market in Japan using the facilitation of some of these organizations, because as you can all imagine, import-export has its own tricky things.
I'll just add, please know that the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism has a high-step program specifically for export products. I would also say the Hawaii Tourism Authority funds a lot of travel missions globally, and that's another mechanism. We do the Hawaii Expo in Japan, usually in the summer in June. We do the same thing in China. Actually, Daniel, our CEO, just went a few weeks ago. So there's a bunch of opportunities with HTA. You can find all of our partnership opportunities on hawaiitourismauthority.org. And then I think the third piece is also just recognizing that in Japan in particular, a lot of hula events like May Day is looking to sort of grow and expand the offering beyond the concert proper. And so there's that. And then I was also, if you're a service organization, looking at Zoom and other platforms as a means by which, even if the traveler can't be here, they still love Hawaii and are still looking for unique experiences that way.
Question came in outside of retail and consumer products. If I have an activity or an experience, what are my pathways to increase visibility? And I'll throw that out to the four of you.
I think from a marketing lens, even though I'm not as in tune as the others,
Are you kidding? You just relaunched Kaimana Beach Hotel, and
it's using social platforms that make sense for your experience, I think is huge, right? The cost is so low. May need a videographer, you may need, someone behind the lens to assist you, but that's huge for us to see out there. Experiences currently, as of today, I don't feel that we don't have enough out there that support the visitor industry. It's been 4 years, and I'm looking for someone that, has a small tour company that can drive a Jeep down to Kaimana Beach Hotel, pick up 2 guests, take them to their favorite hike, throw up a drone or take pictures, of that couple, take them to their favorite restaurant, and then bring them back. How cool would that be for someone that it's their first time here in Hawaii? Everyone gets married and there's a lot of honeymooners here, right? So I guess this is kind of goes back to also, right, if you are looking to engage with the industry and either you don't have a product or you think you have a service, right, think about those types of things when establishing your business. Is that, again, there's not enough out there. Even for the amount of visitors that we have seen over the last 6 months, which is still, not where we've seen in the past.
I'll just add, obviously permitted, of course, and flying a drone with the license and in a place where they're allowed. Sorry, I got to put my government hat on. I'll be the Debbie Downer. But I think what is important, though, also is that, again, as local business owners who are rooted in Hawaii and who call Hawaii home is a great advantage. Visitors are looking for businesses and partners who they can trust. They want people who are involved in their community, who know their community, because if you're taking that 2 guests to their favorite hike and it happens to be, Manoa Falls Trail or whatever it is, people want to know that you're accountable for those guests that are with you. People don't want visitors making any kind and who don't know any better. And it's often not intentional. And I'm thinking about Evan in the back because he is that brother who will come pick up your 2 guests, by the way. I think that it's things like that where there's a trust and an accountability piece of your business that is a selling point for you to not only your community and the residents that you are going to be around, but also to the guests who can trust that you've done the right things to be a responsible business owner in Hawaii and do it in the right way.
Something that came to my mind is that there are different sectors of the types of travelers that come, right? And so you can have the same activity and experience that markets to each of those different sectors, and that marketing strategy could be completely different. So you could be Evan targeting the adventure seeker who wants to go on a really great hike, or you could also be Evan aiming for the romance traveler, providing a very intimate experience for, so I mean, I think, again, going back to this idea of uncoupling yourself from like what you currently think your business is and trying to re-envision it in the scope of who your audience is can be very helpful.
And if you have an activity, there's certainly the kind of traditional in the hotel lobby concierge desks, right? Which, as many of you know, are run by companies like Pleasant or Blue Hawaiian. But understanding how the distribution of experiences actually works. So hotel rooms have distributions, right? We sell hotel rooms on not only our own site, but also on partner sites and the like. But similarly, activity providers also have distribution. And there are only about 3 or 4 that are big globally, like the Viators of the world, right? And so those are actually our white label partners for instance, Marriott Tours and Activities, which is what serves up the suggestion to go ziplining on the North Shore in a pre-arrival email that arrives for a Sheraton Waikiki guest. So kind of unpeeling that onion a little bit and understanding how a guest learns about experiences in Hawaii is important, because we've moved pretty quickly in terms of supplementing the concierge desk with the distribution electronically.
And to add to that, just to echo the B2B side of it, right? You're going to find some contracted business from a travel advisor who predominantly books vacations to the Hawaiian Islands, and she can send you a group of 20 so that you have sort of this contracted business on an ongoing basis. And then you sort of, from your business mix, fill in what we call, Kalani mentioned, the FIT, which, therefore your tour is full. But that's also a very lucrative avenue is on the B2B side of it.
Great. Justin, I'm going to give you the next question, but I want all of our panelists to think of an answer for the following question, because I think you'll all need a little time to think about it. Someone asked, it's 2 questions. What's a gap you currently see that you think there's an opportunity for small business to fill? And the second is, what's a product that you've seen that you really wish was locally made? Or, so everyone start thinking about that. Justin, in the meantime, this comes back to, the question I had asked Allison about what's the time of, a compelling story got the conversion for that business in the case of Meleana's bracelets. Do you have any advice about how individuals can better develop that story?
I guess first and foremost, and to basically echo what Allison said, be authentic about it, Don't try to second guess your own story to fit the needs of who you think your customers want to be. The right ones will align, and the right ones will follow, and the right ones will be patrons. I think that's like first and foremost. The likelihood of it is there's so many avenues. Some of it, I would suggest maybe you, again, find a partner. And we say like influencers, but think of it also, there doesn't need to be the 20,000 follower influencer. It could be a smaller influencer, but has a much more active engagement with their audience, that maybe you both are in the wellness space. So your product and their audience aligns. I guess what I'm trying to say is don't just base it on a numbers game, base it on where you think it'll align and what you think that audience that you've partnered with, that social media, that's like one sort of area that you can explore. Tying it all back to go to these membership organizations, talk story with these people, and then you'll start to find very like-minded people that can actually be mutually beneficial.
Yeah, great point is, we talked a lot about low-cost opportunities to maximize your visibility, but if you are at the stage where you can bring on consultancies, there are a lot of them. Mandi Jamshidi Kent is in the back. She's a consultant with a lot of information and knowledge in the regenerative space. And so this comes back to this idea of just networking and figuring out who you can talk to about how to build your brand no matter what stage you're at. Okay, so The two questions were a gap that you think needs to be filled and a product that you really wish was made locally. I'm going to start all the way on the end so Justin has time to think of his answers.
Well, I fill the gap because apparently there's someone that can pick up a couple and take them to their favorite hike, permitted, and all of that. But I just wanted to add real quick, Allison spoke about, email marketing, right? I follow every hotel. I sign up for all of their e-newsletters. I follow all of the different organizations that are adjacent to our industry on Instagram, and others. And it really allows me to understand, right, what's out there. And then also, for those that are offering products or experiences, you can see how these different organizations are communicating to their demographic or their group. I find it super enlightening. I see what's, and then I also learn. I'm like, oh, butterflies with tea at the Moana. I didn't know. It was only like a half a mile down the road, and so I think that's a tip that I would definitely want to share. It's easy to learn, low cost, zero. Right? You just sign up for a newsletter. The product that there's a lot of products that are made. There's a lot of products that are not made locally that that I wish they would, whether it be because they have a nice marketing angle or they fit a demographic or they tailor their product to a demographic that is aligned with our guest profile, but. I think for what I'm seeing is on the production side, right, is, we partner with Good Merch, who's a local entity. Tiana Gamble and her crew is great. And we produce all of our logo items with her because we want to, we could ship it and buy it in San Francisco or whatever it is, but we want to work with them because they're a local company. But nobody makes T-shirts here. Right, so we can design the logo with a local branding house like Welcome Stranger, right, and we can print it using a organization like Good Merch, right. But there are certain products that we all use, right, that are not. Unfortunately, you can't source here, not a lot anyway. T-shirts come to mind. Or even just the design, right? You can't you can sew them here like Ari South, but you have to get them. You have to get the looms. You have to get the bolts here, and then maybe you could, I think, sublimate that, and print them here. But you still can't get the actual textiles here, right? And so I think those are like, if we're looking for gaps or you're thinking about ideas on how to get into the industry, I think there's those larger ones that it may not be for a small business, right? Like a T-shirt factory, but hey, I think there's a market for it.
Cool. What was the question again?
Gaps. A gap you would like to see filled and a product you would like to see locally made.
Okay, I don't necessarily think there's a gap as much as, well, maybe the gap is that we can't access the people who do that stuff. So there are local coffee people, there are local manufacturers of things, garments that are very, very small. And so the gap is scale for me, maybe. I don't know if that's a weird way of answering this question. To me, it's the inability of us to support you all in scaling your businesses because there are people that do it. And I'm thinking about like Lay, right? I'm thinking about Little Plumeria Farms as a great example of local-owned, family-owned, local-owned plumeria farm who had to move away, but got to like make ends meet, got to do all the things. And how do we scale them up and support them so that we're not shipping in containers of dendrobium orchids from Thailand that get inspected by ag and then are rejected because there were bugs in them, right? And so we think about stuff like that. So
or possums climbing out of the
possums, all the things, right? Wasn't there a snake or something recently too? Anyway, all those things. So I think the gap for me is scale. And then what was the other one?
a product you'd like to see locally made.
Before I move on to that, did you know that not only has the Moana Surfrider been serving tea since 1901, did you know that the banyan tree has a name? Neither did I. No, but I was just saying, I can blow your mind because what is the name?
Are you
I
going to tell us
forget.
the name?
Deva.
So this tree has a name and has had a name for how long? No clue.
Since 1904.
See? So that's the kind of stuff. And so I think the other gap for me, sorry, just to go back to the gap, is the language. If you want to be in this visitor industry, please don't run away from it. Like, run up and hug it, hold on to it, and learn everything you can about it. I think so many people in our community are like afraid of this big, evil, faceless beast that they perceive tourism to be. Learn the language, learn all the parts about it, learn what it is trying to do, and really just understand it. Because I think that whether you like tourism or you don't like tourism, if you understand it, you're either going to have a respect for it or you're going to try to change it, which is what I tried to do. So when I joined HTA in 2016, I applied as Director of Hawaiian Cultural Affairs. I was an angry Kailua kid who was tired of too many tourists taking over Kailua, and I wanted to change it from the inside out. And now I have the ability to do so and have done so. And so, yeah, the gap is sometimes our engagement with this industry, hugging it, holding on to it, learning everything you can about it, speak the language. The one thing I wish we made here that we don't, I'm not necessarily sure if there's a particular thing that we don't, but my one is actually shoes. I would love to see like local cobblers making good shoes, because they're so hard to come by when you have wide luau feet like me. So yeah, shoes.
For me, a gap in terms of experiences, there's two actually. The first is I'm going to pull a ha'aheo and manifest what I'm looking for right now, which is someone to come and actually make bookmarks that actually have a kapa pattern. So we have a push for Sheraton Global Brand. This kind of gives you a little bit of an idea. Sheraton Global Brand is on a very big kind of library concept, the idea of reading and bringing back reading and hard copy books, which is so nice in today's world where we can read a lot on your phone or on a tablet. And so in every market, because that's a global brand, we're able to pull that through and make it our own. And so for Hawaii, I'm looking for a kapa craftsman who can actually come in and talk about the art of making kapa, ideally with traditional implements, and then actually do that with our guests with a bookmark, right? So that gives you a little idea of how we can take a global concept, bring it local, use a local vendor, and then put it out in the universe to go find that local vendor. On a larger scale, specific to this idea of regenerative travel experiences. So whether it's Little Plumeria Farm or a Lo'ikalo on the windward side, one of our bigger gaps is actually transportation and kind of skinning that within end-to-end, meaning that entire experience from the time that they depart, the visitor departs the hotel to the time that they come back. There are maybe one or two vendors that can do that today, and especially with these experiences that are not very easily accessible, right? We are looking for reliable transportation so that we're not sending people on Ubers to Kahalu or something like that. And so, because the Uber might not come back. So the transportation piece is big. Specific to product that we're looking for, like many hotels, right? If you asked me this question 9 months ago, I would tell you that because Marriott is moving from individual shampoo bottles to large format amenity bottles, we are still actually looking for a local soap, shampoo, conditioner maker, right? Who will do a scent that is ginger or something that is not white tea, so that we can localize that particular experience. That example of shampoo and conditioner might not be the most sexy example, but is actually a reality. And if you knew how much we bought in shampoo and conditioner for our large format amenity bottles, it would astound you. And so as you think about when you stay at a hotel or when you visit a place and the things that you touch, we similarly are looking for that product. And, ideally, we acknowledge the fact that buying local will cost something. There's a premium to that. So we just try to make sure that we balance that with continuing to support local vendors. So very much an acknowledgement of the business impact of buying local, whether it's watercress or apples or, well, not apples, but, something that you grow here. Lettuce, right? There's a big push in Central Oahu to grow lettuce so that we don't have to ship it in from Mexico, or shampoo. So if you have a product that might be able to do that, how can we work together to pencil in the numbers to try to get it so that we can make it happen from our side from an economic perspective?
That's awesome, Allison. For me, I guess personally, the gap that I sort of see, and this is sort of just like what I've worked for many years in Waikiki, is I think a lot of the private businesses and entities do a really exceptional job on the history, culture, and aspects and the heritage of the area. What I've always sort of envisioned from a Waikiki perspective is there's like no one central entity that contains Hawaiian history. And again, this is not to discredit whoever is trying to do that out there. I know you guys from a property level really showcase that on the heritage of the property, but I would always wonder, like, why is there, yes, there's Bishop Museum, which is a lovely and wonderful organization, but obviously it's outside of the sort of immediate visitor area. It's sort of, that's like where I guess could potentially be the gap for me, is like we talk about the uniqueness of Hawaii, the culture, the spirit, and aloha itself. I was like, there's just that one sort of facility that can house that, whether it be through merchandise, product, storytelling, etc. My wish list item for what we could actually produce, knowing that Hawaii probably doesn't have the capacity for raw materials, is going kind of back to what HTA is sort of envisioning on their strategic plan, is let's be the model for global tourism in a very conscious way. Like, let Hawaii be that. Let Hawaii own that. And it's going to take a lot of all of us collaboratively working together on that. And not to say that we're just going to throw everything into a singular industry, is how many arms of this industry can branch out, right? And that also in itself becomes a sustainable method, because we're able to provide tax dollars for educating our keiki, providing services for our kupuna, etc. That's sort of my wish list of what we can produce.
Kalani?
I just want to sorry, I'm always going to give you guys data. I'm always going to talk about the nerdy stuff. Anybody know what the percentage change from 2019 to last fiscal year was for visitor spend and arrivals? That's what I mean when I say the gap. Go learn about this industry. So in 2019, we had 10.4 million visitors. Last year, just over 9.6. So we have less visitors coming, about 5% year over year, if you want to look at that. But even though we have less visitors arriving in the Hawaiian Islands than we did in 2019, which by some measures and some audiences is a positive thing, the one that drives a lot of the tax revenue is spend and tax generation. We generated 17% more tax revenue last year than we did in 2019, meaning we reduced the impact of visitors on the Hawaiian Islands because less people showed up. And there's a balance to that, because hotels need certain occupancy to stay afloat, prevent layoffs, all those things. But in its most simple sense, we had less people arrive and spend more money, which is sort of the utopian place that we never thought we could be. But I think it's very intentional, and I want to shout out revenue managers because they do their job well, that drive these results for the state, that allowed $2.4 billion to be put into state coffers to pay all our bills, were done because of that. And so I think what I'm really trying to say is know those things. know what's happening in this industry so that you can impact it in a positive way. Because I know all of us have strong feelings about tourism one way or the other. But again, I would just want to encourage us to like keep pushing and knowing and being more knowledgeable, because the more of us in this trying to reshape it is really what it's going to take. It's a really big ship. It doesn't turn really quickly. It is not a kaulua. It cannot pivot like that. It's a big, massive ship. And so it's going to take a little while to turn.
Thank you. One thing that I heard that, if you're a tech person, we need a B2B marketplace where people can post what they're looking for, because none of that would have come out if the person who asked that question didn't ask what the wish list was, and you might have something to offer. So if you know a tech person, go build a Facebook marketplace for B2B so that everyone can hop on and say what they need and what they don't need. Yeah, Justin, do that. And then just to add on what Kalani was saying about embracing the culture, visitors are demonstrating a desire to get something curated and not tiki culture and not kitsch. And so the best way to do that is embrace our host culture and leverage all the resources, because there's so many. I was just in an unnamed spice store in Kailua the other day, and they had a salt called Pele's like Revenge or something because it was spicy. And so I just asked the shop owner, I was like, look, would you name it Jesus's Revenge? What about Allah's Revenge? And she was like, I don't know where you're going with this. I was like, stop taking names of gods and making lazy product names. It's really easy. There's so many resources. Please embrace it. And on that note, that concludes our talk story.